here's the tools and components I'm going to be using for this project. So we're going to tap into the original reverse light circuit in my tail light. This is better for most cars and smaller SUVs that do not have a trailer plug-in. So some basic tools. We have wire crimpers slash strippers, wire strippers and cutters, fusible link, red and black wire, and we have two little wire strippers, wire crimpers. So these are basically going to fit around the reverse light wires and are going to allow us to plug a connector in. We have some shrink wrap and then some electrical tape. And the shrink wrap and connectors came from these two boxes. One thing to be very careful with while you're doing this is making sure you don't overdo the wattage of the circuit itself. So the circuit in this car, it's a 20 watt circuit, which takes up about less than 5 amps with these two halogen bulbs in here. So they're swapped out for LEDs that use less than 2 watts, and then both of these combined use 18 watts. So I'm right there at the perfect number. Therefore, I didn't have to add a second fuse. I can just use the factory fuse in the fuse box. So my lights of choice are going to be these 4-inch Taillight LED pod lights. So the reason I chose these was because they actually fit perfectly into these little spots that I have. This is a custom-made rear bumper protector that I made from 2-inch tubing. So, without further ado, let's get started. First I'm going to be showing the splice technique. So this is going to involve using 2 wire splicers connected to the original circuit in the car. So this is better for your normal sedans and small SUVs that don't have a trailer plug-in. So with this car, you're going to start by removing the passenger side tail light. So to get to it, we're just going to go ahead and open up the trunk. Moving this tail light is very simple. This has 2 10mm bolts. Headlight should just pop right off, just like that. And then you have all your bulbs and other wires connected to it. So most cars are going to use this same 3-bulb setup. You have one for your tail light and brake light, one for the blinker, and one for the reverse light. So that's what these 3 connectors are. There's your brake light, there's the turn signal, and there's the reverse light. I have the headlight wiring down to bare bones. So here we have the single bulb for the reverse light. So we have our ground wire and our power wire. So we're going to splice into each of them, and we're going to run separate wires all the way down through the bumper, and a good place where we can connect our aftermarket lights. So now is also just a good time to clean behind the tail light, because this is an area you're never able to reach while you're washing the car, just to get rid of all this dust and debris that's trapped behind it. So one thing you always want to do is check if you actually have power. So I have the key in the run position, which turned this little LED light on. So this is our backup light. So I'm going to touch my voltmeter or digital multimeter onto each of these, and I'll make sure that we have at least 12 volts of power. All right, so I'm going to touch it to each side. There's a reading you're looking for. So 11.81 is a pretty reasonable number, just because there's a chance for a small bit of voltage drop through all the wires. Also, the car is not running, so there's going to be less voltage going through it. So we know that we have power now. To do this type of job, there's 2 connectors you can use. So you have your double wire connector, which has a wire going through it, which is your power wire, and you're going to run a separate one through it. There's this type, and there's this type, which I prefer. It's a clamping motion just like this. Your live wire's in the middle, and you're able to plug a small connector in there and run a separate power line, so it's much more clean. So I would use the red and blue just to show the difference in positive and negative, but the blue one is actually meant for a slightly higher gauge wire, so we're going to use both blues. So see how that's done. Just for a better connection, I have spliced a little tiny hole right there. Use both of the holes. I basically just took a little pair of wire cutters and cut away only the insulation of the wire so that we're gonna have a better contact. Okay, so going back is pretty simple. So we're gonna make sure that we have a good contact, and we gotta memorize which is which. So I'm gonna do black first. We're gonna put the little metal contact piece right around there, just like that. Make sure that you have a nice good connection. Push it down, clamp it shut. And we're gonna finish it up using a pair of pliers. So this can be wire cutters or just nice pliers that you have. You're just gonna grab the whole thing, boom, crimp it down, and you're done. So I'll get back when I finish the second one. So now's where the color-coded connectors are really gonna come into play. So I'm gonna put blue for negative. So these are really simple, they just pop right on. Push them in. Helps if you don't miss the hole. Plug it in, just like that. There's one. Repeat the same for the other side. Boom. Pop that one in, just like so. Okay, so now we're gonna grab our digital multimeter and we're gonna plug in and make sure that we have power. All right, I have the original reverse light powered on. So I'm going to stick negative in the blue one, positive in the red one. And we have our reading of about 12 volts. So that's perfect. We know we have power going to it. Now we need a way for power to get to the reverse light down to the bottom of the bumper. So here's all the materials you're gonna need to complete this part. So here's our wire. This is about 3 to 3.5 feet of wire, just depending on how long your bumper is to do this. So this is 14 gauge wire. We have wire cutters, wire strippers, and wire crimpers, as well as a heat gun to use the heat shrink, but a heat gun is not required. You can just use a normal lighter if you don't have that. So here's the first part. We're gonna take each end of our wire. This is 14 gauge wire, so wire strippers are labeled, so we're gonna pick the 14 gauge wire. So we're gonna cut a little bit less, a little bit more than probably 1/4 inch of wire, so about this much. Pop that off there. Same thing for this one. So there we go. We have our 2 stripped wires. Now we're gonna reconnect the connectors. Okay, so I have 2 shrink wrap pieces, so I'm gonna put red on this side and black on here so we don't forget them. Okay, so we're gonna do red first. So it's always a good idea to twist the wire together, make it a smaller profile to get in the connector easier. Slide it right in the hole just like that. Make sure that it's all the way in there. Next, we're gonna take our wire crimpers and we're gonna select the correct gauge wire again. So there's 14 to 16. So there is a rounded part inside of this connector in here, and that has a hole in the middle of it, so you don't want to crimp that part. You want the pointed part of the crimper on the opposite side. So we are going to crimp it just like this. Just like that. As you can see, there's a hole right there where the crimper went in, and that connection's not going anywhere. Do the same thing for the other side. Twist the wire up, fit it in there nicely, and crimp it. Simple as that. All right, here's where we're gonna start heat shrinking the wires. So we have a watertight seal around each connector. So a heat gun is optional. It's very good to have. It's more complicated though. And if you don't have that, just a normal cigarette lighter will work just fine. So I'll do one of each. So we're gonna start with the red one. I'm gonna take the cigarette lighter, casually just, I don't wanna give direct flame on it because I don't wanna burn the heat shrink. So I'm just gonna go a little bit below until the heat shrink fully cures around the connector, just like that. Nice and tight. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the heat gun. So there's our black wire, put the heat gun on low. Give it a second to heat up. Maybe even switch it to high. Done. And you can see which one is cleaner. Definitely the heat gun, but it takes a little more time. So this step is optional. So next up, I did skip this part because it's exactly the same as this side, but we're gonna put connectors on the opposite side that will connect up to your lights themselves, just so we have ease of access. If you ever have to take your lights off or unplug them for whatever reason, you have a simple, easy way to do that. So of course, before you wanna do anything, we're gonna test it. So these lights will light up with a 9-volt battery. So I'm going to touch it to either side of the 9-volt battery, and looks like they're on. So we know our lights work. So now we're gonna hook everything up, and I'll show you guys the final result. Okay, this step's gonna be 2-in-1. We're gonna take our wire, we're gonna plug it into the connectors that we made. So, just like that. These connectors are kind of bent on the inside, so it's kind of, shoved in the corner. A little difficult to get in there, but we're gonna get it in. There's one, there's two, and we're gonna feed this wire all the way down through the bumper. So I'm able to go straight down under the headlight, feed it back below, and then feed it all the way to the back right here. So there's the finished product. All right, the lights are all hooked up and ready to go, so I'm gonna put the car in reverse, see if they work. Look at that, perfect. So here we're going back to the connectors, and we're gonna seal it up with some electrical tape just so we can get some watertight seals on both of these. So here's our finished product right now. Got both the lights hooked up. They look killer. So I'll film in a minute when it gets dark, and I'll get some good footage of just how much light these output. So I used to have these lights on the front of the car for a while. I have it on one of these bull bars. So they were on the front, and they just really would not shine far enough to be front lights. But this perfect flood pattern is just perfect for these. It's great for reverse lights. So, fantastic.
Bitch, you want BBM, we should be closer than friends. If you OPN, engaging you's on my agenda. Request my chariot to get ya. The door's OPN, take that high road and hop in. Open up.